My sister stood outside my room for 3 hours, just smiling, and she never blinked. At first, I thought she was sleepwalking. It was around 2:18 a.m. when I noticed her standing in the hallway through the crack under my door, completely still. I opened the door slightly. She was facing me directly, smiling. Her hair covered half her face. "Emma?" No response, just smiling. Then I realized something worse. Her eyes looked too wide, like she was forcing them open. I slowly backed away from the door. "Emma, what are you doing?" Very quietly, she whispered.
He almost got in.
My chest tightened. "Ooh." Her smile widened slightly. Then she said,
The thing that wears Dad's face.
Every light upstairs suddenly shut off. The hallway became completely dark. I slammed the bedroom door instantly. My phone flashlight shook in my hand as I locked it. Then came 3 soft knocks.
Please let me in.
My sister's voice, crying now.
I don't want them to see me.
I stood frozen beside the bed. Then another voice spoke outside the door. My father's voice.
Emma?
Silence. Then my sister whispered.
That's not Dad.
Slow footsteps crossed the hallway outside my room, then stopped directly in front of the door. The thing outside breathed slowly, heavy, wet, and then, in my father's exact voice, it whispered,
She opened the door for me already.
My husband has been standing at the foot of our bed every night, and every night, he is a little closer. The first time I woke and saw him there, just a shape in the dark, I thought he was sick or sleepwalking. I said his name. He didn't answer. He didn't move. He stood at the foot of the bed, facing me, perfectly still until the sky went gray. Then he climbed back in beside me, as if nothing had happened. In the morning, he didn't remember any of it. He laughed it off. People sleepwalk, he said. It's stress. We have a baby on the way. It's just stress. But it kept happening, and I started measuring. The first night he stood by the door, across the room. The next night, halfway. The night after that, at the foot of the bed, then beside it. Every night, closer to me. Never a sound. Never a step I could hear. Just there, a little nearer, watching me sleep. I set my phone on the dresser and let it record through the night. I needed to see what he did. In the morning, I watched it back, and my hands went cold. He wasn't watching me. For hours he stood there, and his eyes never once dropped to the bed. He was watching the door. He stood between me and the bedroom door, facing it, like he was waiting for it to open. And every time the house creaked, he flinched and moved half a step closer to my side, not toward the door, toward me, putting himself in front of me. I told him what I'd seen. He went quiet. Then he said he'd been having the same dream every night for weeks. In the dream, something comes to our door, and he has to stand in front of it and keep very still and not let it know I'm there. He said in the dream, it gets closer every night too, and the last few nights, he can hear it breathing on the other side of the door. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay still with my eyes almost shut and watched him get up, slow and quiet, and take his place at the foot of the bed, facing the door. And I watched the door. Under it, in the gap, the hallway light was blocked. 2 small shadows. Feet. Someone standing on the other side, waiting. My husband raised one hand, slowly, palm out, toward the door. Stay back. Stay back. Last night, I woke at 3 a.m., and the foot of the bed was empty. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't there. The room was cold. The bedroom door was open. And from the dark of the hallway, in my husband's voice, soft and calm and patient, something said my name, and then it said, It's all right. You can come out now. He's not standing in the way anymore. I haven't moved. The baby is kicking. And whatever was on the other side of that door every night, The thing my husband stood in front of, the thing he kept so still for, so it wouldn't know I was here, it knows now. And there is nothing left between us. My daughter's reflection smiled at me a second after she did. She's 7. She was brushing her teeth, looked up at me in the bathroom mirror, and grinned, foam everywhere. I grinned back, and the girl in the mirror waited 1 full second. Then she smiled too. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a lag in my own tired eyes. But once I'd seen it, I couldn't stop seeing it. Over the next few days, I started watching the mirror instead of her. When she blinked, the reflection blinked, a beat late. When she turned to leave, the reflection lingered, looking back into the room a moment longer than it should have, looking at me. One night I stood in her doorway while she slept and watched the small mirror on her dresser. She was facing away from it, completely still, deep asleep. But in the glass, her reflection was lying on its side, facing out, watching the door, watching me. I didn't trust myself, so I set my phone on the dresser and recorded the mirror through the night. In the morning, I played it back. For hours, nothing. Then, at 3004, the reflection sat up, slowly, while my daughter, in the bed, did not move at all. It sat up in the glass, leaned toward the camera, close, until its face filled the screen, and it mouthed 3 words I could read clear as day. Let me out. After that, I started hearing her at night, soft talking from her room, the way kids murmur to a toy. But when I pressed my ear to her door, there were 2 voices, hers and another one, the same voice, a half-second behind, finishing her sentences for her. When I opened the door, she was alone, sitting in front of the mirror in the dark. They both went quiet at the same time, a beat apart. I took the mirror down. I took down every mirror in the house. My daughter cried and asked where her friend went. I asked her, what friend? She said, the girl who lives in the glass? She said they'd been practicing. She said the girl was learning to move first, so that soon my daughter could just follow along and rest. That night, I checked on her one more time. She was standing at the bare wall where her mirror used to hang, palm pressed flat against the paint, perfectly still. On the other side of that wall is only the outside of the house. There is nothing back there. But under her small hand, pressing back through the wall, I could see the faint outline of a second hand, the same size, a little late. I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face and looked up, out of habit, at where the mirror used to be. There is just a pale square on the wall now, where the glass kept the paint from fading. But I swear, when I looked away, the pale square waited. 1 full second. And then it looked away too. My mother has been counting down since Tuesday. Out loud, 1 number at a time. She'll be washing a dish or folding a towel, and quietly, almost to herself, she'll say a number. Then she goes back to whatever she was doing. The next one comes an hour later, always 1 lower than the last. When I first noticed, she was somewhere in the 400s. I asked her what she was counting. She looked at me, kind and a little puzzled, and said she wasn't counting anything. Then she folded the towel, set it down, and said, very softly, 411. I'd come to stay with her after my father passed. Just for a while, I told myself, until the house stopped feeling so big around her. It's an old house, the one I grew up in, full of long hallways and rooms nobody uses anymore. My sister lives across the country, so it was the 2 of us, my mother, me, and a number that kept getting smaller. I told myself it was grief, or her age. People who live alone talk to themselves. But the next morning, I texted my sister to ask if Mom had ever done this before. While I was typing, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother, from the kitchen, 20 feet away. It was a single number, 398. I hadn't asked her anything. She'd just sent it. That afternoon, I called my sister and asked, carefully, if Dad had ever done anything like this. Counted. To himself. She went quiet for a long time. Then she said yes, in his last week. They'd all thought it was the medication, the morphine, the way it scrambles people at the end. Nobody wrote down the numbers. Nobody thought to. Why? And then she asked me, in a small voice, what number Mom was on. I told her. She hung up and she didn't call back. I started writing the numbers down with the times, and I saw it wasn't random and it wasn't steady either. Some hours she dropped 1. Some hours she dropped 12. The count was speeding up. And I noticed something else. Every time the number fell, she forgot something. At 300, she called me by my father's name. At 270, she asked when I was going home, and I had to tell her I lived here now, that I'd lived here for a month. At 200, she looked at the photographs on the mantel, the ones of me as a boy, and asked who the little kid was. That was when I understood what she was counting. She wasn't counting down to something. She was counting down me. Every number was one less thing she remembered about her own son, and when she reached 0, there would be nothing of me left in her at all. I tried to stop it. I sat her down. I held both her hands. I said my name over and over and made her say it back. She did, patiently, the way you humor someone. And the second she finished, calm as ever, she said the next number. 1 lower. It hadn't helped. It had cost her nothing to play along, and it had taken something anyway. That night I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I heard her voice through the wall, soft and even. I went into the hall. Her bedroom door was open, and the room was dark, and she was asleep. I could hear her breathing, slow and deep, but the counting kept going. I followed it. It was coming from the kitchen. The smart speaker on the counter was lit up, the way it does when it's speaking, and in my mother's voice, calm and warm, it was counting. 61, 60, 59. I never set it up to do that. It doesn't have her voice. I pulled the plug out of the wall, and the light died, and the room went quiet. And then, from the living room, the television turned itself on to a black screen, and in her voice it said 58. From down the hall, the old baby monitor we'd never thrown out crackled and said 57. Then my own phone, in my hand, lit up with no call, no app, nothing, and said 56. And then it said my name, the way she used to say it when I was small, and went dark. After that, the numbers fell fast. By morning, she was in the 30s. She didn't know my face anymore. She was polite to me, the careful politeness you give a stranger in your home. She asked me, twice, if I was the man who had come to fix the heater. At dinner, she sat 2 places, one for herself and one across from her, and when I sat down in it, she looked startled, and then she smiled and said she'd been saving that seat for her son. I said I was her son. She patted my hand and said, "Oh, I had a son, you know. Lovely boy." And she said a number. I tried to make her remember. I showed her the photos, the old report cards, a drawing I made for her when I was 6 that she'd kept for 40 years. She looked at each one kindly, set it down, and said a number. 19, 11, 7, each one lower. Each one, a little more of me, gone out of the only person who had known me my whole life. This evening she reached the end. I was sitting across from her at the kitchen table, the way we'd sat 1,000 times before. She looked at me with a calm, pleasant, empty face, and she said, 1. Then she smiled, the warm smile she'd had my whole life, and she said, 0. And she asked me, gently, the way you'd be polite to a guest, "I'm sorry, who are you?" And she meant it. I opened my mouth to tell her, to say my name, my own name, the name she gave me, and for one long, cold second, standing in the kitchen I grew up in front of the woman who raised me, I could not remember it either. From the other room, very softly, in her voice, the counting started again. But this time it was going up. My father repeated my sentence back to me, word for word, about a second after I said it, and he smiled. The patient smile you give a joke you didn't find funny. I'd said, I think the heater's broken again. And he said it back. Same words, same tired tone, my tone. I laughed it off. He was 71. People that age repeat things. They reach for the last thing they heard. That's what I told myself the first night. By the second morning, I understood I had it backwards. He wasn't repeating after me. He was repeating before me. I'd moved back into the house I grew up in 3 weeks earlier. Nothing dramatic. A lease that ended. A job that didn't. My mother was away that week, visiting her sister. So it was just the two of us. Me, my father, and a house that creaked the way it always had. The repeating started small. I'd say I was going to make coffee, and a beat later he'd murmur it from the next room. At first it overlapped with mine, like a bad phone connection. Then at the exact same time. Then, and this is the part I kept rewinding, it started landing first. Wednesday night, I was at the sink. I opened my mouth to say, I'm going up to bed. And from the doorway behind me, in his voice, I heard it. I'm going up to bed. Before I'd made a sound, I turned around. He sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, watching me with that patient smile. You didn't say anything almost, I told him. And he said it back at the exact moment I did, perfectly in sync, like he was reading off the same page, half a second early. I didn't sleep much that night. In the morning, I told myself I was tired, that stress could do strange things to how you hear people. Then I found the voicemail. My mother had left it 8 days earlier before I'd even arrived. I'd never listened. It was nothing, reminding my father to take his pills. But underneath her voice, faint in the background, I could hear him, repeating her. Half a second before she said it. This had been happening before I got here. It hadn't started with me. I started recording, just to hear it back when I was calm, to convince myself I was wrong. I left my phone running on the counter for 2 days. When I played it back, the repeating was there. But there was something else inside the recording, something I'd missed. Over those 2 days, his voice was changing. On the first day, he sounded like himself. Gravel, that slight flatness he'd had my whole life. By the last recording, the gravel was gone. The cadence had shifted. The little upward lift at the end of his questions, the way certain words got swallowed. He was starting to sound like me. And I realized the repeating was never the point. It was practice. He wasn't echoing me because he'd lost the thread. He was studying the thread, learning the exact shape of how I talk, so he could wear it. That night I set up the old baby monitor from the hall closet, the one with the little camera, the one they'd used on me 40 years ago. I put the camera in the hall, pointed at my bedroom door, and kept the monitor on the pillow beside me. At 2 a.m. I woke to my own voice. It was coming from the monitor. Soft, close. The way you talk to yourself when you're certain no one can hear. And it was saying things I hadn't said. Plans for the next day. A grocery list. A memory only I knew. I looked at the little screen. The camera showed the hall, and it showed my father standing outside my bedroom door, perfectly still, his mouth not moving at all, while my voice poured out of him, fluent and easy, like it had always been his. I'd been talking to him in the kitchen 10 minutes before. I was sure of it. I think I was sure of it. After that, it came fast. He stopped repeating altogether. He didn't need to. When I spoke to him, he answered in my voice. Not mockingly, not even strangely. Naturally, warmly. the way I'd answer someone I loved. The last evening, my own phone rang. I picked it up and looked at the screen. The name on it was mine. I didn't answer. I just listened to it ring. And from down the hall, from my own bedroom, I heard the same ringtone. And then it stopped. Because someone in there had answered it. I stood in the hallway. The door to my room was open a few inches. The light was on behind it. And my voice was talking to someone in a low, comfortable tone, saying my name, agreeing to things. I should have run. Instead, I did the only thing that still felt like mine. I opened my mouth to say, "Who is that?" And before I could make a sound, from the room, gentle, certain, already mine, the answer came. "It's just me. Go back to sleep." And the worst part, the part I can't get out of my head, is that I almost did. Because the voice was so familiar. Because it sounded exactly like the person I trust most. It sounded exactly like me.